We hope she feels better soon. We begin with 2014-948. Councilman Mitchell appropriates $13,100,000 from the undesignated fund balance of the general fund of the General Services District to Metro Schools. The sponsor is not here. We have no correspondence, so this would be deferred by rule. And that moves us to 2014-963. Councilman Stein determines to issue $21 million in GSD general obligation bonds for the purchase of heavy equipment for the departments of Fire, Public Works, Parks, and the Metro Action Commission, and for the purchase of technology equipment for schools. Moved in a second. Councilman Tigert.
Rich, if you would walk us through the financing mechanism here.
You should be on now.
As it relates to the school computer equipment, the proposal there would be just do that typical bond resolution. Those would be permanent bond financing for that. As it relates to the $15 million or so for the equipment, we have a pressing need to buy a lot of equipment. The idea was we want to expedite so we can buy a large amount rather than spread it out over a couple-year period, which is what we've been doing. And we've kind of fallen behind on, especially on the heavy equipment side. So the idea here is it's in the form of an initial bond resolution, because that enables us to access our commercial paper program to pay for the initial purchase of the equipment. The $15 million or so. We would then, rather than issue permanent bonds for that equipment, over the next 3 or 4 years, we would pay it back out of subsequent 4% funding. So you just basically we're advancing our 4% funding and using this really inexpensive way to do it. And that's really why we're doing it that way.
Is the 3 to 4 years set in stone? I mean, is there a repayment that we're going to pledge X number of thousands of dollars each 90-day period or whatever?
I think the council will have to appropriate the 4% money on an annual basis, as they're obligated to do. And so each year for the next 4 years, we would appropriate whatever into $3,250,000 plus a little bit of interest, because it's very modest interest for us. In the first, what we would do is on the first first 4% filing each fiscal year, which we usually do in August or September, we would include the appropriation for that to pay off that equipment.
All right, you said basically we've gotten behind. What situation occurred us to get behind?
Yeah, I think there's a combination of a couple things, and the fleet operators may want to comment on it if I don't handle it correctly or completely. But I think it's a combination of a couple factors. I think one is the flood. If you remember, we didn't do any 4% purchases one year because we set aside a lot of that money for potential flood needs. And second is we've added a lot of new vehicles to the equipment, both primarily police cars, which we've tapped the 4% fund for. So we've not had as much money available the last 2 or 3 years for heavy equipment that we had in prior years. If I just bear with me just a second, in some of the prior years, 08, 9, we spent over $10 million on heavy equipment, and then averaged probably somewhere in the 8 to $10 million. But then in 13 and 14, that number dropped down to last year. We only spent about $2 million on heavy equipment, and $4 million so far this year. So we've allowed ourselves to get behind because there's just not enough money to go around, and we've had other needs that have kind of taken priority. And then we're hearing the departments, especially the 3 major departments that are here today, have really been beating on the door saying we really have some problems with our heavy equipment needs. We've got to get this addressed as quickly as possible.
Is the 4% fund going to be sufficient in the future, or based on the increasing cost of heavy equipment, wear and tear and whatnot, is this going to continue to be a problem, and should we consider increasing the percentage?
I think one thing I should have added in my answer in terms of other demands, I talked about other fleet demands. We've also had over the last several years new police precincts opening up, which we've furnished with 4% equipment, and some other facilities, which would kind of put a drain on the 4% fund as well. I think going forward, we should be fine, and I think we'll have more than enough money in that fund, but I think it's something that's worth taking a look at down the road.
John, what's the history of that fund percentage-wise? Has it always been 4%?
Yes, by charter, you have to set aside 4% of the general fund budget.
When the charter was adopted, it was 5%.
Right.
And then because it grew pretty high, because 5% of the budget is, as the budget has grown, by charter amendment, it was dropped to 4%. I don't remember exactly, but it's been 15, 20 years ago, probably a long time ago now. But for probably the first half or so of Metro, it was 5%, and then it was reduced to 4%.
Gotcha. Well, certainly, and I think you hit upon a key element, our people in the field, whether they be policemen or firemen or public works employees or brush pickup, need equipment that works, state-of-the-art, safe and reliable to do the work that our citizens and you and I demand of them. So this is something we got to do. I think we do need to monitor that, just to see if 4% is the right amount and make sure we don't get into this situation again based on those extenuating circumstances that you talked about. Thank you.
Councilman Claiborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Following along the same line of questioning that Charlie had, I'm glad to hear you say that this is not going to be paid for as a bond issue long term, because paying for things for 10, 15, 20 years or how long that may be already ushered out of the program is not a good idea. So are we looking then, you said 3 or 4 years? 4 years, okay. So this administration and this council, we're going away in 2015. So is there, would it be appropriate and is there a mechanism to obligate the next administration and the next council to follow through with those 2 successive years of 4% appropriation to pay for this equipment?
You can't bind future. I'm looking at Mr. Cooper, but I don't believe we can legally bind a future council to any action in this regard. I think it's an annual appropriation, and so I think that the subsequent councils will have to face this issue of whether to continue paying for it out of the 4% money, paying it back out of the 4% money, or they could choose a different alternative. I would hope that they would follow this procedure.
Is there a way then to have some required reporting on the status of the repayment so that it is absolutely is guaranteed to come to the attention of the next administrator and the next council?
Clearly. I mean, I think we'll happily report to you and give an update as we go forward on this. So yes, we can do that.
Okay. I just, you mentioned in one of your responses to Charlie that we've gotten in a situation that we've gotten in because there have been other needs and other priorities. So I just don't want to get in a situation here where 2 years now, 3 years from now, there's another need and another priority, and we've already established a priority. I don't disagree that this equipment is necessary and needed, and that we need, if this is a quick way to get it, that we need to probably do it. But I just don't want to get in a situation where this priority gets replaced by another priority before it's completely paid off and taken care of.
Councilman Tigert.
Okay, I thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me some leeway. I deliberately wanted to speak on 2 different components of this. Now we're talking about the computers for schools, $6 million. Why would we not use our rainy day fund and pay cash for these computers and not pay interest over 20 years if we have a rainy day fund for purposes like this?
Well, first, I'm not, let's make sure we're talking about the same rate. You talking about the 4% fund or the reserves?
I'm talking about the school reserve fund for the tablets.
Because schools are not eligible for funding under the 4% reserve fund. Okay, just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
But they have a rainy day fund that's over and above what's required by law.
That's correct.
So basically, we have two ways to fund these computers. We sell bonds and fund them over 20 years and pay interest, or we tap into reserve funds. I guess a third way, or we take it out of current budget. Am I correct there?
Probably so, yeah. There may be other ways, but I think it's a policy issue, and you may disagree with my thoughts on it, but that's fine. But it seems to me that, first of all, schools has always funded its technology from bonds. That's how it has been done for the last, I don't know how many years, at least since I've been here, 6 years now. We've provided some $20 or $25 million to the schools over that period to provide for technological needs, some of which has a shorter lifespan, some of it has a longer lifespan, but it's the way schools have been funded. They're not the beneficiary of something like the 4% reserve fund, which we have set up under the charter for the general fund. It's my thought that as we approach the budget year, there's going to be lots of demands on this council, on the administration, on how we're going to fund funds next year. And to deplenish the school's reserves at this time, I think is just not a fiscally sound policy to do. I think that as part of the budget process, that's a different issue. But when we're 2 months away from major discussions, 3 months away from major discussions about schools, I think to draw down any more of its reserves just puts us all in a very difficult situation for next year. And I think we ought to address that during the budget process.
During the budget process, would we be drawing down the reserve funds to pay for recurring expenses? In other words,
last year we appropriated some of the school's fund balance into the operating budget. It's too early this year to know whether we would recommend something like that again.
Sure. Could I ask Mr. Henson? I think I saw him here earlier.
Mr. Henson, if you would come to the podium, welcome.
Thanks for being here. Chris, how much interest do we pay a year on the technology that we have purchased that Mr. Riebling just described? Do you have any ballpark figure off the top of your head?
I don't. Since the financing is handled by Metro Finance, I don't know what that number would be.
Are these 20-year bonds, to your knowledge?
I'm not sure how the financing occurs since it is all handled through the Metro Finance Department. I don't know the different mechanisms over the years that have been used.
So is there just a line item in your budget for bond repayment? Is that how it works?
There is not. It's part of the capital funding, just like any building addition or building renovation or new school.
So it doesn't hit their budget then?
It's not in their operating budget. If you look at the budget ordinance, you have general fund, operating, USD operating, and schools budget, and then you have debt service for USD and GSD. It falls into the GSD debt service budget.
Well, I guess the philosophical debate to have, whether it be now or 3 months from now, is how much interest are we paying on technology and other short-lived equipment over a 20-year period of the lifespan of these bonds versus a shorter period of time. I know it puts pressure on that immediate budget, but we're saving interest cost. And this is the Dave Ramsey, my daddy teaching me, if you can't afford it, you save up till you can buy it type thing.
Well, Councilman, when we do a bond issue and authorize bonds, we fund a bunch of projects, some of which have a lifespan like a school of 40, 50 years.
Right.
And some of which, road paving, which has a 5 or 7 or 10 year lifespan. Some technology equipment, which probably has a 5 to 7 year lifespan. All of that's ultimately funded over a 20-year period. And arguably, you pay the early years when you pay the debt service, you're paying off those projects first. I mean, it's semantics, but that's arguably what you're doing. And I think it's, a strong financial government has to balance operating requirements along with debt requirements, and that's what we do every year.
Is another model, though, to set up a savings account for future technology needs and end up paying cash for purchases like this?
I think that's fine, but Mr. Henson will tell you that money's just going to come out of his operating budget, and he's pressured in his operating budget for all his other needs.
If this body were to appropriate an amount over and above what the daily operating is with the understanding, I know we can't force, but the understanding that this is a savings account, an extra rainy day fund, I just think that's, at some point, governments are so dependent now on issuing bonds and to raise capital that at some point we need to consider a savings account and put off the purchase a year or two and try to pay cash for to avoid interest cost is my point.
Councilman Claiborne. Stay with us one second.
Thank you. I just have one more question relative to the last question that I asked. And Mr. Cooper, I guess I'll ask you. Would it be proper if I wanted to offer an amendment to this resolution that would specifically state that a status update to the council would be given in January of each year until these 21 million or less are paid off?
That would actually need to be done by ordinance, which would have to be separate legislation.
Okay. All right.
Further discussion on 963? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. 963 is recommended. Thank you, Mr. Henson. Let me also at this point follow up to a committee request. You all should have gotten today by email a response memo from Mr. Riebling with an update on ballpark progress. So if you've not seen that, one should look in their email, and that was a request from Councilman Claiborne at our last meeting, I believe. So thank you, Mr. Riebling, for responding.
If we have questions about that, can we tack that on to the heel of the agenda since you brought it up?
You can if we're not running off to the next committee meeting, but you can also meet with Mr. Riebling at length and take those up. We move on to 973, approves council members Tigert and Stein and Langster, approves an amendment to a grant from the Friends of Centennial Park and the Parthenon to the Metro Parks Department to provide funding for an employee by increasing the amount of the grant by $55,000 and extending the term through December 31st, 2014. Moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of 973 say aye. Opposed, no. 973 is recommended. 974, Councilmembers Stein and Maynard approves the 8th and 9th Amendments to a federal grant to the Metro Board of Health to achieve established ambient air quality standards by increasing the amount of the grant by $254,956 and extending the term of the grant through September 30th, 2014. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of 974 say aye. Opposed, no. 974 is recommended. Without objection, 975, 76, and 977 all approve agreements between Metro and a variety of police departments, and without objection, we'll take them all together. So seeing none, 975, Council Members Stein, Langster, and Pardue approves an agreement between Metro and the Tennessee Association of Chiefs of Police for the distribution of $10,000 of grant funds to assist with investigations of internet crimes against children. 976, Council Members Stein and Pardue approves an agreement between Metro and the Dixon County Sheriff's Office for the distribution of $25,000 of grant funds to assist with investigations of internet crimes against children. And 977, Council Members Stein and Pardue approves an agreement between Metro and the Cookeville Police Department for the distribution of a $25,000 grant funds to assist with the investigations of internet crimes against children. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of 975, 976, and 977 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Those three bills, 975, 6, and 7 will be recommended. 978, Councilmember Stein and Pardue approves a grant of $4,100 from the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee to the Davidson County Sheriff's Office to build outdoor shelters for animals in collaboration with the Metro Animal Control Center. Moved and seconded. Councilman Tigert.
I never miss an opportunity to ask Mr. Taylor some questions about this. John, thanks for being here. How many houses or shelters will this $4,100 build?
Not very many. I don't have an exact number of what we would build. I can get that for you if you want it. Those are, usually built for the ones that do adopt a pet, but don't necessarily have the economic means to purchase all the stuff that goes with them.
So what is the criteria to apply for one of these shelters?
Animal control handles that part. We just use the offender labor to build those.
Is the supply meeting demand at this stage?
As far as we're aware, yes, sir.
So is this an annual grant that's averaged this that you think will
Yes, sir.
provide animal control with the necessary shelters for the rest of the year?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
Councilman Claiborne.
You think it would be possible to make these multifamily and include chickens as a,
That's for the planning committee meeting. Any further discussion on 978? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. 978 is recommended. 979, Councilmember Stein and Pardue approves a state grant of $112,000 to the Metro Police Department to fund a pilot program to assist victims from high-crime areas. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of 979 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. 979 is recommended. 980 and 981 are similar interlocal agreements, and without objection, we will take them together. Seeing none, 980, Councilmember Stein, Dominy, and others approves an intergovernmental agreement between Metro, the State Department of Transportation, and the City of Brentwood for a regional traffic management study and the traffic signal optimization effort for several intersections in southern Davidson County and the City of Brentwood in Williamson County. And 981, Councilmember Stein, Dominy, and others approves an interlocal agreement between Metro, the State Department of Transportation, and the City of Brentwood that provides for implementation of a regional traffic management study for several intersections in southern Davidson County and the City of Brentwood in Williamson County. May I have a motion? Moved and seconded. Councilwoman Berry.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. Since it is an intergovernmental agreement, I assume that between the two bodies, we're both on the hook for some amount of money. Who's paying what?
It's a 80-20 split between the federal government and the two local jurisdictions, and Brentwood and Metro are each paying 10%.
So we are paying an equal amount?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on 80 and 81? Seeing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. 980, 981 are recommended. 982, Councilmembers Berry, Dominy, and Stein approves an intergovernmental agreement between the State Department of Transportation and Metro Public Works for miscellaneous safety improvements on Chute Lane and Saundersville Road at a cost of $825,740. Councilwoman Berry moves approval. We have a second. You're welcome to speak to it. This is your first.
Since this is my first bill representing former council member Darren Jernigan's district, I would just like to move approval.
Boy, you're doing wonders for the district, too. This is a large amount of money. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Yeah.
Opposed, no. 982 is recommended. 983, Councilman Stein authorizes Department of Law to settle the Metro Transit Authority's property damage claim against Metro for the amount of $10,864.86. May I have a motion? Moved and seconded. Councilman Tigert.
In John's analysis, and I think he's got an update for us about the disciplinary action for the water services employee.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes, I was advised by Metro Water today that the employee received a 7-day suspension.
Could I ask someone from water about that suspension?
Jim Snyder, Metro Water.
Jim, thanks for being here.
Yes, sir.
Is this amount of time consistent with previous accidents? Is there a policy, a chart, or is every case handled individually? And this seems to be a longer suspension than some other departments have given for similar type accidents.
Yes, Councilman. It's a case-by-case scenario. In this case, the individual was not certified to be driving the heavy equipment, and therefore received a longer suspension.
So he got into a vehicle he was not certified to be in?
In his attempt to move a vehicle, yes, he got in the vehicle, so we felt like that the suspension warranted a longer suspension than what would normally be.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman Gilmore?
Okay, thank you, Chair Stein. I actually wanted to see if Public Works was here. I have a question just about the traffic on 10th and Jefferson. It relates.
With regard to the settlement?
It's about the number of accidents that happen. I know we're talking about the settlement, but I just had a question about it.
Do we have someone from Public Works that can address that?
Because there's quite a few accidents there. I know you. So thank you for indulging me, dear Chair. I know,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
know.
I'm on your side.
Thank you, I appreciate you.
Billy Davis, Metro Public Works and Engineering. We'll have to get that data for you tomorrow night. I couldn't tell you that off the top of our heads, but we can look into it.
Okay, good, because I would like a study done, because I know that there's quite a few accidents and quite a few people have hit that building on 10th and Jefferson, so that's why I wanted to request while you were here. I know that this is something that's happened between two Metro departments and that there's an actual accident. We're talking about negligence, but I do think that 10th and Jefferson needs to be looked at in something in the way of some type of traffic calming device or something of some sorts, because there are quite a few accidents. So I would be interested in knowing the amount that has happened within the last maybe 2 years or so.
We'll do our best to get that information for you.
And I'm requesting a traffic study as well.
Yeah, and I would submit that it probably won't affect necessarily the outcome on this settlement, so you may have more than just one day to get that to Council Lady Gilmore, if you would respond to her in short order, though, if that's okay, Council Lady Gilmore.
Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to take care of it while we were.
Well, I understand that. We'll get it to you
yes.
as soon as we can, but we don't want to hold up the settlement in case that
Oh,
doesn't.
no. I wasn't trying to hold up anything, but I did want to request a study while we have them at our attention, because I do think it's a larger problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Weiner.
Was the driver alone and took it upon himself to get in and move the piece of equipment?
The driver claimed that he could operate that type of equipment and proceeded to be of assistance, drive the equipment. Fortunately, no one was injured.
So was the supervisor there when that happened?
The supervisor was present, the new supervisor, and was not that familiar with the employee's certification history. So we're taking steps in that direction as well.
So we will have a process or a plan in place that people understand what the appropriate procedure is?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any further questions on 983? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. 983 is recommended. This moves us to bills on second reading. Councilman Stein approves a memorandum of understanding between United Way of Metropolitan Nashville and the Mayor's Office pertaining to implementation of the Financial Empowerment Center. May I have a motion? It's moved and seconded. There is a proposed amendment in your amendment package, which is to correct, it's a housekeeping amendment to correct a date. If I might have a motion on that amendment. And seconded. Any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, those in favor of the amendment say aye. The amendment is approved. We're back on 661 as amended. Any Council Lady Berry?
Thank you, Chair. Just because I think we do actually have Mr. Cole in with us. Yes, is he?
Yes, he's here.
Great. Perhaps he would just take a quick second and approach the microphone and just give us a quick overview of how all this is going.
We're delighted to have your voice back in this chamber.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Council Lady Berry. Thank you. Financial Empowerment Center program's going very smoothly in partnership with United Way. We've served over 850 clients citywide since we started, with over 2,500 individual one-on-one counseling sessions. So, as a reminder, any Davidson County resident can come into one of our centers and get free one-on-one financial counseling along the lines of Dave Ramsey that Councilman Tigard mentioned so affectionately earlier.
Great, thank you.
Any further discussion on 660? Those in favor of 661 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. 661 will be recommended. 662, Councilman Stein accepts 2 donations from the estate of Patricia A. Harbaugh for the use and benefit of the Police Department Canine Unit and Metro Animal Control. May I have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Councilman Tygart.
Yeah, thank you. Question for Mr. Sharp, I guess. First of all, what do we know about Patricia Harbaugh?
I'll ask Councilman Tygart. I don't know much about her at all.
Do we know any,
She liked animals.
other than she liked animals? But, I think somebody should write a letter to the family members and thank them for following up on her wishes. Okay, so you got $34,845 coming soon, and it says no specific purpose noted. What is the highest and best use for this money?
For when we get these one-time donations like this, the best things are for capital improvements at the center. Generally, you can't put it in your operations, it would go too quickly. I talked to Dr. Hager earlier today about what he had in mind, and he had a list of things that are probably worth a good bit more than $34,000.
Could you share with us what some of those items might be?
One of the hang-ups in getting animals from the back of the building to the adoption center is getting them cleaned up, getting them bathed and groomed and so forth. Because we only have one tub, he wants to replace a tub and get another one that has a hydraulic lift that makes it easier to do. There are some surgical equipment. There's a lot of different things there. We need cat kennels.
Okay, and then apparently there will be 2 more retirement accounts that are coming, $24,000 and $54,000?
Yes, sir.
At what point, Mr. Cooper, do we know at what point will they come before this body also?
This resolution actually accepts those funds too.
All of them at the same time?
And it appropriates about $100,000 to the health department.
So your capital needs would be the designated purpose for these other 2 funds?
Yes, sir, and there may be some programmatic uses for some of that money for community spay and neuter, for instance.
Okay. Rich, question, how do we advertise or should we advertise, or how do we make known to citizens that if they have a special interest or a purpose fund, that there is a way that a portion of their estate can be granted to Metro? Have we ever done that in the past?
Perhaps we should talk to the Community Foundation about including Metro government, Mr. Riebling. Maybe we should talk to Community Foundation, and Metro government could be listed with the other nonprofits in the city.
That was the direction I was going to head, because having met with Ellen this past week on a different matter, the money goes a lot further that way. So, I think this is an opportunity to promote the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee and how if people do have special interest funds, how they could leave a legacy to do so.
And already do, because there are funds that, for example, I believe for the Arts Commission and the Historic Commission. Councilman Bedney at Councilman Dominy's desk.
Thank you. A question for you. I had a recent meeting with people in my constituency that were concerned about what they see as too many dogs being euthanized. And they were wondering if this money that is coming to Nashville could be used to somehow reduce that amount.
A lot of the changes that we are making there are geared towards increasing our adoption rates. A lot of things are happening towards that end, partly for that purpose. The way to get out of it eventually is to have a more robust spay and neuter process in the community. As long as we're intaking 8 or 9 or 10,000 animals a year, it's unlikely that we'll be able to adopt ourselves out of a fairly high euthanasia number. If we can get that number down, though, the euthanasia number goes with it. And so, but a lot of these expenditures will be towards adoption programs. It's more expensive to adopt an animal, but it's worth it, we think.
Thank you.
Councilman Claiborne.
If I might just add to Mr. Sharp's reply to the councilman, Council Lady Berry, okay. Yeah, you look alike. We sit on the Metro Animal Care and Control Advisory Committee, and I'd just like to tell the councilman that the numbers of animals that are being euthanized are going down. They've gone down for the last 2 years, and part of that has to do with a lot of the partnerships that Mr. Sharp mentioned that are getting animals out into other organizations that are helping to put them in good homes and so on. So the numbers are going down, not as fast as a lot of people would like to see, but a lot faster than they have been in the past. Instead of going up, they are going down.
Any further discussion on 662? Seeing none, those in favor of recommendation say aye. Opposed, no. 662 will be recommended. 663, Council Members Bennett, Stein, and others, declares the former Jerry Baxter Middle School property located at 3515 Gallatin Pike to be surplus, authorizes the Director of Public Property Administration to sell the property in accordance with the standard procedures for the disposition of surplus property. At the request of the administration, I need a motion to defer for one meeting. And a second. It'll be back before us at another point. All those in favor of deferral say aye. Opposed, no. 663 is deferred for one meeting. We move to a memorializing resolution. We have one that's on our agenda, and then there's a proposed late filed resolution for us to consider. 984, Councilman Tigert requires the Davidson County delegation to the Tennessee General Assembly to introduce and support the necessary legislation to provide a dedicated funding source for local mass transit. Councilman Tigert, what's your motion?
My motion is to defer one meeting to track with some ordinances that would come up on second reading next meeting.
Okay. Without any objection to deferral for one meeting, seeing none, those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. 984 is deferred for one meeting. The proposed late filed resolution is unnumbered in your amendments package. I am the sponsor, along with several others, Councilor Berry and several others, request the Davidson County Election Commission to provide 5 additional early voting sites for the May 2014 primary election, and expressing the council's intent to provide up to $60,000 in supplemental funding for the Election Commission to cover the cost of providing the additional early voting sites. If I might have a motion for consideration, I'll give you an explanation. Moved, seconded. There have obviously been lots of discussion about the fact the Election Commission is planning on one site at the Fulton Complex for 2 weeks, which is the minimum under the law. In response to much discussion, and I might add, not the recommendation of the Election Commission, who keeps saying that we need to request it, that they somehow can't take action to request more, which is sort of beyond me, and I've urged the administration and the Election Commission to address all of their future needs, particularly for next August and next November in our budget process, and I assure you that the chair is going to join in questioning them to make sure that they feel funded for that. This resolution is a little bit out of the ordinary because, number one, it's a memorializing resolution in which we're asking for more early voting sites, and secondly, what it says is, at Mr. Riebling's request and suggestion, they are going to get a supplemental in April to the Election Commission dealing with other issues. It is his belief that we should simply add to that one-time funding the amount of funding it takes to add early voting sites. The $60,000 would give them some leeway to provide a minimum of 5 locations for 5 days, and they can configure that other ways. It also very specifically, before I get questioned by district council members about their particular district, it does not delineate what sites would be chosen. It's their authority to do that, and it's my belief, like other autonomous bodies, they should be able to exercise their authority to choose where these early voting sites are. I suspect they'll use very traditional ones. So that's why it's being brought late. It's being brought late because clearly they have to advertise early voting sites within the next 10 days. So if we don't act quickly and late outside our ordinary business, then indeed they will by law not be able to advertise those sites. So I do apologize. As you all well know, I'm not a fan of things being filed late, but in this instance, there's been so much conversation in the community about the need for more locations. I thought that this merited this special. So with that explanation, and then Mr. Cooper can help if I have missed any place. Councilman Tigert, you're recognized. I'm sorry, you're not. There you are.
Is it I know we're not getting into individual sites, but before the approval of this money, could we make it certain or understood or whatever mechanism that these sites should be distributed throughout the entire county to reach the greatest number of people?
Yeah, let me say, and far be it from me to defend the Election Commission, I think that is always their intention when they have multiple sites. So my assumption is that they will use 4 or 5 of the traditional places they have been that have been distributed around the county. Certainly that is the intent of this, and we will add that in terms of this request as this is presented to make sure that it's equally distributed throughout the county.
And how did you determine 5 locations as opposed to 3 or 8?
I just was trying to come up with a reasonable amount of money to allow them to do it. They estimated that it's about $2,000 a day per site. And so without trying to expend, again, an exorbitant amount of money out of our reserve fund and yet spend important money out of our reserve fund, that's how, I mean, it's a fairly random suggestion, but it's also seemed to me that it's my belief they're going to maximize it based on conversations with them. So if there were 5 sites for 5 days in addition to the Fulton complex, that would be 6 sites for 5 days and 1 site for 2 weeks. It seems to me to give the community a large amount of time to plan their voting within that and to get to one of those sites.
I'm just trying to figure if Mr. Reedland found some loose change under his desk or something and said 50,000 works.
No, they're being supported, but I would say, without putting words in his mouth, I would say that, again, they're always hesitant to recommend spending money out of the reserves, but they acknowledge the importance of voting as well. Councilwoman Johnson.
Will we be able to know about those locations before they're finalized?
I think the Election Commission will have to vote on this at their meeting on February, whenever their next meeting is, so I would urge you to talk to the election commissioners about sites.
But can they send that information to the council before that meeting?
I don't know. I can't speak to them. They will get this resolution as soon as we pass it and the mayor signs it. At that point, then I think they take it to their meeting, which has to occur, I believe, before February 15.
Okay, now, the reason why I'm a little bit concerned is I don't want certain areas to get a lot more preference than others. I just don't want it to be lopsided in terms of access.
And all I can say to you is that we have those concerns about the Election Commission in every election, and they never have enough sites to get the entire county. I think they try to spread them out. I would say to you that my hope is that this council is going on record saying that any more sites than the single one is certainly a much preferable situation to having only 1 site at the Fulton Center.
I totally agree, but Southeast Davidson County is large, so we want our fair share.
I understand that, but if we don't do this memorializing resolution, there will be nothing done because their preference is to do nothing.
I support you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Davis.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a quick public comment. I mean, I hope that the commission realizes this is a very serious issue and just wanted to go on record. Feels like the situation has just gotten worse and worse over the last few years with the lack of early voting sites. And I hope we can have a serious discussion this budget cycle and just, let it be known that we really want to make sure everyone has access, and early voting sites are very important to us. And just from what you said, is it because it's a memorializing, they don't have to respond back to us or anything, correct?
No, without putting words in their mouth, there is a strong indication from their leadership that if the council requests it, they will have more sites.
Okay.
They are not, and I've described it this way, there's a passive aggressiveness to this. They don't want to do it on their own. They don't want to ask us for more money. They want to wait for us. I mean, there's a silliness to this that frankly is beyond me, which is why I've committed to you all. I've already spoken to Mr. Riebling and urged them in their discussions with the Election Commission for next year's budget to make sure they are comfortable that they're putting enough money in, and I assure you we will talk to them about it when they come before us so that we don't go through this next year with 2 elections. Hypothetically, they could choose not to. Now, the good news is if they choose not to, then we don't have to put this in the supplemental, so they won't get additional money for their budget they could use for something else. But the other thing I would say to you is, to members of the council, if we vote for this memorializing resolution, while it is not binding, I will tell you there is a moral commitment on our part to provide them with that $60,000 if indeed they provide the early voting.
Sure, yeah, and I think we're more than committed to doing that, yeah, and we wouldn't have a problem. I just think, yeah, as you say, let's just work it out before next budget, and that way when they come in here, we know what we're getting next year, and this is all sorted out. Thank you.
That's everyone's goal, I think. Councilman Tiger. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Claiborne.
Yes, Mr. Riebling, explain to me your position on this. I'm a little bit, I thought I understood what the chair said, and then he said something else that made me not so sure.
Well,
so
let me explain my remarks before you ask him, because I may have caused the confusion, not him. I would tell you that in my discussions, the administration and Mr. Riebling are always reluctant to spend reserve funds, but in this instance, they have been supportive of this notion because they too believe that we should have more early voting sites. And if that's not what I said, I apologize.
okay, Mr. Riebling? But, I mean, so the the 60,000 is not, I'm not clear on exactly when that would come forth. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
For those departments that need some additional funding in their budget, whatever. We have already made a commitment to the Election Commission to provide them some additional funding that is primarily related to the move from the Metro office building to the Metro Southeast campus. There were some costs associated with that, operating the small office, keeping the small office required some additional personnel. This all came up after the budget, and we assured them that with their cooperation on the move, that when we did the supplemental, we would provide some additional funding for them. And that's what our commitment is, and I can't remember the exact number, it's $200-something thousand. And so the plan is for that to come to the council along with whoever else needs a supplemental, if there are others, on sometime at one of the meetings in April. So assuming that the commission does the early voting sites, then when we did the supplemental resolution in April, it would be for up to $60,000 more than what we had originally agreed to with the Election Commission. And as long as it gets into this year's budget, they'll be able to, it'll work for them from an operating perspective. Okay. That's kind of how the scenario will work out.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Berry.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say thank you for your leadership on this. I really appreciate it. I know that it is a non-binding memorializing resolution, but I think it sends the right message, especially to the voters of Davidson County who have absolutely taken advantage of early voting more and more, and making it easier for voters should be the goal. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Johnson, do you want to be recognized again? Councilman Bedney at Councilman Domney's desk. Is that a better seat over there somehow?
I have a big head, and I am always on the way of the people speaking on the podium. So I just wanted to go on the record back in what Council Lady Johnson said, because we do need, this is our only chance to talk to Election Commission officially, and I think we really want them to consider having an early voting place in the Southeast that has been very successful over the years. So I just wanted to go on record saying that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the late resolution? Seeing none, those members of the committee in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. It will be recommended to the full council. Thank you, and thank you, Councilman Hunt, for your understanding. We stand adjourned.